We can't win if we don't flush the toilet. If you don't have enough respect to flush the toilet for your teammate, how are you going to die for him on 4th and 1? Virginia was not on the radar. I knew that I wanted to build a program that was centered around the holistic development of young men through the game. In your eagerness and your excitement, don't lose perspective. We're still going to be a relational program to build champion men by serving their heart, not their talent. From there, it goes into our core values: humility, effort, accountability, respect, and toughness.
Take me through that first 4 weeks or so.
I didn't sleep and I gained about 30 pounds. I'm basically living out of a hotel, trying to evaluate the roster. We're going to need a little TLC. And that's not 10-11 care. That's team leadership commitment. The 2025 team, being a team that makes a decision to be different.
What are the things that still need to happen at this place in order for you to get to that pinnacle of college football?
Great question.
Coach Elliott, appreciate you doing this.
I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for having us out. We're sitting here in your beautiful indoor facility here. It seems like this place is really invested in football the right way, and you just walking around campus today. I was recruited here maybe 10 years ago, a long time ago, but it looks a lot different now. So do you feel like you have that support there to win at the highest level?
Definitely, and it's a lot different than when we showed up here as a staff about 3 years ago. The facility that we're in right now was here, but the new facility that hopefully you get an opportunity to go through and take a peek at is new. And there's a new Olympic building that's going up, so not just football benefited from the investment. And then if you go around campus, we got new hotels, new dorms, new buildings, new libraries, all new everything being built. But that's just who Virginia is. I mean, there's an unbelievably committed alumni base, which is evident from the size of the endowment, and that money is invested back into the campus so that we can attract the best and the brightest to come to UVA. So a lot of change, a lot of construction, which is all positive.
Well, I was excited to sit down with you because I've followed your career for a long time and the success you've had at previous stops, and what you've done now here at Virginia. And you walked into a program here that needed a little bit of a rebuild and a new jolt of energy. I'm curious, when you walked in here on day one and you had that first team meeting, what was going through your mind of, these are the things that I need to do right away to get this place where I want it to be?
It was a very unique transition. And so the first team meeting was right down there.
Oh, really?
Because at that time, the new facility wasn't built. And this is where the team was conducting its team meetings, which was new to me, coming from the environment that I came from. But, man, I was excited. But at the same time, I was addressing the team to introduce myself, and then I was turning the team back over to Coach Mendenhall to finish out because he was going to finish the bowl game. And so the first team meeting was really about, hey, this is who I am. This is where we're headed. Now, here's what I need you to do. I need you to go finish for Coach. Make sure that you put an exclamation point on his time here and finish out with this team, and then we'll start back in January. But I knew I was going to have to, build, so to speak. Wasn't quite sure. I mean, the process happens so fast when you're transitioning, and you try to gather as much information as you can, but it happens fast, so you don't have all the details. And so young coach, get my first opportunity. I knew I was going to have to come in and reestablish the culture and lay the foundation of things, but I also knew there was going to be some change. Part of what attracted me was the opportunity to have some new facilities go up and put a fingerprint on that as we build the program. But I had a big plan, and I had it all mapped out, shared a little bit with the team, and then obviously they get ready for the bowl game, and hated it for that group because they were getting ready to play in the bowl game, and then COVID hits. They're not able to go. They have a COVID issue. They're not able to go to the bowl game, and so basically I was anticipating. I was back home in South Carolina, and I was getting ready to fly up to Boston to join the team for the bowl game, and then I get a call a day before I'm leaving. I'm like, oh well. The bowl game's been canceled. The team's all yours. Go figure it out. And so it was a unique transition, but nonetheless, just a lot of excitement to have an opportunity to try and build something the way that I believe is the right way.
Take me through that first 4 weeks or so, because not only are you transitioning with your team, but you're also putting a staff together and having to recruit coaches to come here, and then you're recruiting your own roster, and then you're hitting the high school and the portal and all that stuff. Well, it had to be a whirlwind. You sleep much for those 4
No,
so
I didn't sleep, and I gained about 30 pounds because my sleep patterns were off. I was eating. I was away from my family. I was up here. My family's in South Carolina. I'm basically living out of a hotel. sleeping in McHugh some nights, trying to evaluate the roster, trying to evaluate which coaches you may want to retain while you're trying to recruit coaches. And so it's a whirlwind. And I think we also got a big snowstorm as soon as I got here, so I don't have any power where I'm living at, so I'm sleeping and showering in the office, and so it's kind of old school.
Yeah,
it's
the way it's supposed to be, right?
The way it was supposed to be, but had tremendous support, and we finally kind of got it stabilized, got the staff in place. Then we hit the ground running, and then now we're also trying to recruit. Right. So what we did, and I believe it was the right thing in conjunction with the administration, we signed all the kids that were committed to Coach Mendenhall. Right. And so we signed about 10 guys, and then we had to go try to get some transfers in, and then also go and finish out with the high school class. And so it was a whirlwind. Yeah.
What were the things during that process of deciding to take the job here that made this a place you wanted to be long-term and build a program? You were a name that I remember at the time that was in the mix for a bunch of jobs all over the country, and as much as Virginia chose you, you also chose Virginia.
Correct, and so the process really started for me after the 2015 season when we went on the national championship run and lost to Alabama, and the call started to come. And that's when I started to think about, okay, if I'm going to make this transition, what do I want it to look like? And I was looking for a place that I felt like fit me. First and foremost, I was a football player and I love ball, but also I was very fortunate to be raised by my aunt, who was a school principal. So she created that balance in me to see the value of education while, competing at the highest level in your sport. And so I wanted a place that fit me, somewhere where academics were truly going to be important. Not to say they're not important at other places, but it's a little bit different here at the University of Virginia. Because I knew that I wanted to build a program that was centered around the holistic development of young men through the game. And so I needed that academic component. And so as I started thinking about it, naturally there were a lot of schools in the ACC that I felt like fit from an academic standpoint, and that balance, that competitive balance between academics and football. And so I kind of had an idea of schools that fit me, and I was sticking to that. Even though there were opportunities to go other places earlier than I chose to transition here, but I just didn't feel like it fit. And I wanted to be able to be me. I felt like the only way that I would be successful is being me, being comfortable in my own skin, not trying to create an identity that's different than who I am. And then going through the process, really, Virginia was not on the radar when I entered into the transition, because I felt like the year before I left Clemson, I was well down the road with another school, and then just decided that it wasn't, the right fit for me. And so then the next year I knew, like, okay, this is the year that I'm going to, really be ready to transition. And Virginia, nobody anticipated that Coach Mendenhall was going to step down. But it was always a school in the back of my mind that fit me. And so I'm talking to a couple of other schools. Actually, I'd done some interviews, was kind of headed in one direction, and then Virginia called. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm a man of faith. And I thought to myself, well, this isn't just happening by happenstance. There's a reason why they're calling. So then Carla calls, had an opportunity to connect with her. And I said, you know what, I'll take a look at it, because I felt like it fit. And just the interaction with Dr. Williams and how she conducted her business, how upfront and honest she was. She's very transparent. And then there was something that said, you know what, this was the right fit for me. And, didn't know what all we were stepping into, right? But I was stepping out on faith and just happy to be here.
There's a lot of talk in coaching circles about alignment and how important alignment is with administration and the the coaching staff, and does the commitment match the expectation, right? Do you have the resources that you need to win at the highest level? You talked about Dr. Williams, or Tyler Jones, your general manager in the administration. How has that alignment from the administration helped you as you've implemented your culture and what you wanted here at the program?
Right, that's a great question about alignment, and that was something that Coach Sweeney taught me while I was there. Is if you're looking for anything, look for alignment, and I felt that. So when I came on my interview, I met with Dr. Williams and also President at that time was President Ryan, and I felt like there was an alignment between them. And then by the end of the process, when I finally made my decision, I felt like there was an alignment between myself and Dr. Williams, and they believed in who I was as a person, not just the success that I was associated with, but they believed in who I was and how I wanted to build the program. So it started there, and then over the years, what you've seen, man, they fulfilled kind of the things that they said on the front end. I knew that the facility was in the works, and Dr. Williams said, you know what, hey, I'll make sure within 2 years that it's done for you. And she fulfilled that promise. And then as the landscape has changed in college football, you know, she's gone to work, and her and Tyler Jones and really all of VAF and everybody who's responsible for raising dollars to support the program, they've gone to work, and you've seen that increase over the last couple of years. And the alignment has allowed me to be able to get the culture the way that I want the culture in the building. And it's really centered around that holistic development. And and then also teaching everybody, you know, what it takes to win at the highest level from a football perspective, but also doing it without compromising, right, your values as a human being, and then also as a scholar athlete.
Yeah. As we sit here right now in 2025, if you could go give yourself a piece of advice on day one of the job, what would it be?
Right, great question. So the advice that I would give myself is, in your eagerness and your excitement, don't lose perspective. And what I mean by that is, I came in the door and I hit the ground running. And I'm like, okay, you brought me here. Everybody wants to go win. I just came out of an environment where for the previous, 6 years, college football playoff, and just that mindset, a lot of winning, right? A lot of winning, and the mentality that went into that. And so I hit the ground running. And I just took off sprinting, and I'm like telling everybody, catch up, y'all, come on. Y'all said you want to do it, come on. But the reality is they weren't prepared. And what I forgotten was the preparation that went into the 4 years behind the scenes between 2011 and 2014, where we were building towards that historic run, right? And so I hit the ground 7 years in, as opposed to year one. And so I had to take a step back and slow down and really just focus on the teaching of all of the little things that go into building that mindset. I hit the ground thinking everybody was going to have the same mindset that I did. And I was bringing in a lot of staff that weren't with me at Clemson, so didn't quite understand, that mindset. And so that would be the advice that I would give myself and anybody who's coming in the door. Right? Have your plans, but also keep great perspective, so that you don't have to go back, right? Once you've already taken off on a spree.
Yeah, I love that. You talked about implementing the little things. Give me an example of how you actually build the culture, like tangibly, in your first couple of years, and you're trying to set the tone and say, here's how we win. This is what it looks like. How are you doing that throughout the year?
I got a great example.
Okay.
Flush the toilets. I mean, every day, the first year and a half, on my way out to practice, I'd be the last one out the building by design, right? I want to get everybody out of the building, and then I'd walk through the restroom area in the locker room, and I'd count the number of urinals where the toilets weren't flushed, right? And then I would come out and I would tell the guys, like, we can't win if we don't flush the toilets. And they're looking at me like, huh? Like, why does that even matter? Right? I said, well, if you don't have enough respect to flush the toilet for your teammate, how are you going to die for him on 4th and 1? Like, you're not, right? So it's the little things. Cleaning up after ourselves, right? Putting our tape in the trash and not leaving it on the ground, expecting the janitor to come in and clean it up. When we go to the movies as a team, leave it spotless, right? So just those little things lead to big things. And as we started to learn that, then you started to see the connection grow even stronger. Right? Then you started to see the chemistry increase on the field, which led to better production, right? And so those were the little things, but that the ones that were here know that the toilet example was a big one, and I would count them every day. I was like, all right, boys, we flushed 6 out of 8. All right, that's 2 we left. Or today we didn't flush 6 of them. But over time they started to see the importance, and then what they started to see with me was a consistency in checking it. So they knew every day I was going to go check it. Right? So they saw consistency in me, which, kind of fostered a sense of urgency with everybody. And so then now, not only are we flushing toilets, but man, we're walking around the building looking for trash to pick up. Right? So now we're starting to have a sense of everything matters. And now we're constantly in a state where we're looking for ways to get better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'd imagine now you have the leaders in the locker room telling all the young guys, you better flush the toilets.
Flush the toilets, clean up, because they know Coach Elliott will walk through at any time. And if it's not to the standard, then they're going to get called out. There's going to be a picture of somebody's locker put up in the team meeting and saying, hey, this isn't this. And that also started to allow for the creation of accountability, right? And I know that nobody wants to be called out, but in the game of football, you played the game, so there's accountability, and there's instant accountability in this game. And so those little things allowed me to help the guys become comfortable with the accountability and understand that it's not personal, right? It's intentional.
Yeah. When it comes to building your roster here at Virginia and getting the players that you need to win, how has your strategy evolved around transfer portal versus high school recruiting? I feel like that's one of the challenges or decisions you have to make. Are you a lot of times the portal corresponds with winning immediately, but maybe not long-term success, versus building it through high school players. How have you, adapted to that challenge?
That's a great question, because I've had to adapt. Because how I was trained, and it's just how I was trained. I was in an environment where for 11 years, there were no transfers. You didn't take
anti-transfer.
And I think they've only taken 3 transfers in the last 4 or 5 years total. So that was kind of part of my mindset. And then I came here wanting to build, right? And build it my way, and build it through what we call the draft as opposed to free agency. And so the first couple of years, it was more focused on high school recruiting, and then also supplementing with some transfers. However, the NIL situation early on was kind of, we recruited to the level of transfers that we could based off the resources that we had from an NIL standpoint. But now where we are with how rapidly it's changing, and then also with the generosity of our donor base and what they did this past offseason to give us more resources to be able to recruit, my philosophy has changed a little bit. So I would have said I came in the door probably a 75-25 roster composition guy, meaning I want 75% of my kids from the high school ranks and 25% from the transfer portal. We also had an unprecedented tragedy that kind of changed the timing of our roster, meaning that we got additional years of eligibility as a result of that. And so we had guys that were on our roster longer. And I wasn't going to make any changes with those guys because I just believed that the right thing to do was to let them finish here at UVA for as long as they needed to. But now I'm probably more of a 50-50, 60-40 kind of split. But I still do want to recruit high school students, right? So if you look at our roster now, we have 54 guys come in, right? That's a lot of guys. 30, so I guess 32 of them were transfer, 22 were high school. So we're still trying to keep that balance because I think in order to maintain culture, you got to have guys that are consistently in your program to help whenever you do have a transition with the portal guys.
Do you feel like it's made you hone in the evaluation piece even more? Even in high school, you may watch a guy and before you'd be like, he can play in year 3, where maybe now it's like, he better be able to play right away, or we may lose him to the portal.
Right. I mean, in transparency, I tell the coaches, hey, if high school guys got to be ready to hit the field in year 2, because if not, they're not going to stay, right? Like, no matter what you do to create a positive environment, they have the ability to move, right? And so it's changed a little bit, and it's unfortunate because I was a high school developmental guy. I wasn't ready to play college football until my 3rd year, if I'm being honest. And there's still a lot of really good football players out there, but the nature of where we are in the landscape, those guys got to be ready to go early if you want to keep them in your program. And also, too, I think from an evaluation standpoint, we still have to take into consideration the social fit and the academic fit here at the University of Virginia, one of the most prestigious schools in the country. So, man, we can find really, really good football players, but we got to find guys that are also going to accept the challenge, on grounds, because they're going to be in small class sizes, nowhere to hide them. There's no kind of football majors where we can put guys and get them through. Our guys got to compete at a high level in the classroom. So we got to balance all of that.
Well, one thing I've noticed about you and talking to players is players love playing for you. You're a player's coach. And But one of the challenges in this era is that it's a transactional business at times, and you have to balance being a player's coach and caring about the players while also making business decisions for your team, and deciding who's on your roster and who you're going to pay and all those things.
Right.
How do you balance the two things, being a player's coach but also making tough decisions at times?
Well, one, it starts with having a great staff, a staff that is aligned with who I am, what my values are, and we've been very fortunate. We're one of the few schools in the country that returns the entire staff. So, and then most of those guys have been with me for 4 years, right? And so I'm committed to them as well. So they know what it takes to play for Coach Elliott, and we talk about it all the time. Regardless of what's happening in the industry, we're still going to be a relational program. Now we're going to introduce and incorporate the transactional pieces, and that's where you mentioned Tyler Jones and Justice Spiros and the folks kind of in the front office. You know, I count on them to kind of manage all of the financial piece, so that I don't have a conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Like I can really kind of stay, on the outside looking in, but I am heavily involved in the evaluation process. But they have a great understanding too of what it takes to be successful as a scholar athlete here at the University of Virginia. But that's how we keep it separate. And as long as I'm coaching, and I've told myself this, the moment that it becomes transactional for me as a coach with the players, then I need to step away.
Yeah.
Right, because I mean, at the end of the day, with all of that, these are still 18 to 22-year-olds. And, man, I'm so grateful for the college aspect of my experience that helped me to grow, as a young person, because I wouldn't have been ready for a completely transactional experience at 18 years old.
Yeah. I want to ask about NIL. We're here this week launching Corner Media Co. with the University of Virginia to bring more NIL opportunities for Virginia athletes. What's been an example of a positive part of NIL that you've enjoyed? Because there's a lot of talk about the negative parts of college football. Where's it been a positive?
Well, first of all, thank you for your investment in our young people, and I really, really appreciate your desire and passion to want to work with our guys. And I think you'll be really impressed once you get a chance to meet some of them. But the positive is, for us, we try to do things the right way. And the way we believe is right. And so for us, NIL, our guys have had to get out in the community. Right, they've had to put in the work, and so the positive impact is to see their faces and their bodies present all throughout the community. And then when you're walking around in a grocery store or in the community, somebody comes up and says, "Hey, I met such and such player, and he's such a phenomenal young man." So to see the impact that they're having in the community, and then also too, just to see some of the pressure alleviated off of these young men, so that they can focus on what matters, right? Because now, like before, most of us were driven by what? Taking care of my family, being able to help my family. And now they have a little bit of resources to be able to do that, so they can get back to focusing on, what is most important. So it's been awesome to see the impact that it's having on their individual families, but then also on the community on a large scale.
Yeah. During your time here so far, has there been a moment where maybe it's not a win, but a moment where you said, okay, this thing's starting to click. If the locker room's starting to get it and we're headed in the right direction?
I think the North Carolina game on the road, winning that game, I started to see it kind of turn with the celebration in the locker room, and then kind of the confidence, start to transition. That was probably a moment where you saw the guys finally come together, play together. It wasn't a perfect game, but man, they battled all the way to the end, and they found a way to win. So that was probably one of the moments where I could step back and say, you know what, I think it's starting to turn.
Yeah. I always think in training camp time, one of the most important meetings of the year is that first team meeting at training camp, right? It's where the head coach really sets the tone for the season. You have the whole team together for maybe the first time with the new players and the transfers. What was your message in that first team meeting for this training camp? So
for this training camp, each training camp we're going to start with reestablishing what we call program installation. So we're reestablishing the core values, so everybody knows exactly what the mission of the program is. So it starts with the mission of our program, which is to build champion men by serving their heart, not their talent. All right, and from there it goes into our core values: humility, effort, accountability, respect, and toughness. The non-negotiables that we're going to have. So that's kind of where it starts. And then as we progress through that meeting, we kind of finish with a central theme for the team. And back in the spring, I had told the team that, man, this football season, we're going to need a little TLC. And that's not 10 to 11 care. That's team leadership commitment. All right. And so that's kind of the theme for the spring. And the guys started to adopt that, and it was everywhere in the building. And then what I told them, I said, hey, that TLC is going to CLT. It's just kind of the play on the words. And so the objective is to end up in Charlotte in December. And the only way we're going to be able to get there is TLC to CLT. Yeah. And that's kind of how we ended it, and really set the tempo for the 2025 team being a team that makes a decision to be different.
It's awesome. Remember the days when training camp used to be padded practices two times?
Oh yeah. So my last year of college was the first year that they did away with back-to-back two-a-days.
Got it.
So we went 2-1, 2-1, but those were full pads in the morning, at 24 periods. Shells, 18 periods in the afternoon, weights in between. You remember those meetings at the end of the night from like 7 to
8
10?
p.m.
Oh my God.
Oh man, I was telling a player, I was talking to a player a couple of days ago, and I was telling him how we used to do full pads in the morning and then like shells at night. And they were like, in the same day? I'm like, yeah, same day, man. The meetings after the night practice.
That's right. So a two-a-day is a walkthrough now for us. But you know what? I will say this. These young men, they work extremely hard. I think the game has changed a little bit from when I played. It's a much more spatial game. And these guys are bigger, faster, stronger. And they go at it all year long. Yeah. Right. So I think the changes have been the right changes. But I tell you, it is challenging trying to figure out how to put together a schedule for camp. And like our guys, I was looking at it, the last 14 days, they've had 11 days in pads. 2 of those were scrimmages. That's still a lot of contact, a lot of hitting.
Yeah. How do you approach actual tackling during fall camp? Because you want to get the live reps for your defense and for the ball carriers to practice it, but you also want to keep guys off the ground. How do you handle that?
Correct. So that's one area where I feel like we've grown this training camp, is learning how to practice and staying on our feet when it's non-live situations. And we put a big emphasis on that. But we've had 2 full scrimmages. We got to tackle, we got to practice it. But depth has allowed us to be able to do that. So I think the kind of the condition of your team is going to determine how much tackling you actually do. If you got a more veteran team, then you may do less tackling. But we still got, even though we got 54 new guys, we got a very balanced roster. So 50% are upperclassmen, 50% are underclassmen. So we still have the tackle, and we'll probably tackle a little bit tomorrow on Tuesday, our last full padded practice of fall camp. And then we'll be probably close to about 10 days out. Then we'll start tapering off.
Last couple of things I got for you, Coach. I appreciate your time. You mentioned going to Charlotte. What are the things that still need to happen at this place in order for you to get to that pinnacle of college football?
Great question. I think the connection between everybody believing that we can, right? All areas that touch the program, there's got to be that attitude of belief. Consistency. I think we still got to grow as a team and not beat ourselves. If you look at us over the last 2 seasons, we've had about 7 games that were one-possession games in the fourth quarter, and we found a way not to win those games. You got to learn how to win those games. And then competitive depth. We still got to continue to increase the competitive depth, because to play that late in the season at a high level is going to be determined by the amount of depth that you have. Yeah.
Last thing for you, Coach. What's your why? What's the reason you do what you do?
My why. So my why comes from my faith, and that is to be the best that I can be, to impact other people's lives, to be able to see my Savior. And if it had to make it a why of why I do what I do in terms of coaching, it's the Lord's plan. I went to school to be an engineer, and I did that for 2 years before I even got into coaching. Right. So I had a really, really good job with a great schedule, making a lot of money. And the Lord got a hold of me and said, you know what, I want to take you back to football, use that platform to help you, not to help me, but to help young people realize all that they can accomplish through the game and in life, and really just use football as a training ground to build future leaders. Because if it weren't for the game of football, I wouldn't be sitting here today. And it's a great opportunity for me to give back and to really just help young people maximize all the gifts and talents. Like when I think about you, you're a football player, but man, you're very gifted at what you're doing. Like now you're walking in your other gifts. And if it wasn't for the game of football, you may not have come to that realization as early as you did. And now you have an opportunity to not just impact football players, but you can impact people in the media space, right? And what a blessing that is. So I know that's a long answer, but my why is to help other people realize all of the God-given gifts and talents that they have. And football just happens to be the platform that I do that through.
Awesome. Well, Coach, I appreciate your time. Excited to see the success you're going to have this season. Excited to work with you and your program as we launch Corner Media Co. and do some great things for Virginia.
Man, I really appreciate the opportunity to spend this
Thanks,
time
Coach.
with you.